political zones is expected to house at least 1,000 houses. Joining me on this discussion this morning is architect or engineer Churchill Azubike, ISU, who is a civil engineer, as well as Mr. Moses Abba, who is the founder and CEO, Hilvard Realty. He is also a real estate developer and broker. Gentlemen, you're very much welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Well, let me start with you, Moses.
Yeah.
You are in the business of real estate in Abuja, and the renewed Hope City that the president hampered on in his broadcast yesterday is one that is also being constructed here in Abuja in Karsana. Knowing the business fully well, how do you think this can mitigate the housing deficits in the country?
I think this is a very fantastic move by the president to actually, mitigate the housing deficit in Nigeria. Currently, as we all know, we have 28 million housing deficit, and this is quite worrisome. And of course, we are expecting it to increase. You understand? It's very, very understandable that, of course, the government alone cannot provide all these houses.
Yes.
But for the president to make this outstanding move is a great one, because I understand that we are the project
Yes.
is actually catering for 100,000 housing units across the country. Yes, and of course, Lagos and Abuja will be having 20,000 each from that 100,000, and the one that has been launched in Karsana, which is more like the phase one,
flagship phase of the project.
Exactly. It's a fantastic one because, of course, aside from the fact that Abuja is having, would I say, like 10%, the 10% out of the 28 million housing deficit we have, you understand, covers in Abuja. We have over 2 million housing deficit in Abuja. You understand? So we are having, the government provide 20,000. It's a great feat. And then of course, I like the system which the government is taking to provide this housing. The project currently,
yes.
The public-private partnership. So I think generally it's a great move, and it's also, of course, the low and middle income earners now have a chance to be able to own a home, especially in Abuja. Currently, we are having a lot of issues with people not being able to afford rent because it's very, very high. You understand? People not being able to afford houses. It's all, like in Nigeria generally, only 10% of people who want to own a home actually have the capacity
to do so.
Yeah. So it's a great feat for the government. And in a nutshell, what I really like is that the government, because it's a public-private partnership, so it means that the government and the private sector can actually collaborate in reducing the housing deficit, which I think is very, very great.
Well, coming over to you now, Engineer Azubike, this is a statement that the president made yesterday, although let's not digress into other matters. I believe it wasn't expected as part of what the protest planners or the protesters expected the president to say. However, since it has been said, let's address it. You are a civil engineer. There is a housing deficit in the country, particularly in Abuja, where there is mass migration of people who are looking for greener pastures. How realistic are these renewed hope cities that are going to be erected across the states of the country? Well, realistically speaking, to mitigate the housing deficit, let me get your take on that.
The point here is actually there's a missing link between availability of houses and affordability of houses. You may have houses because in Abuja, for instance, you have many unoccupied houses and we have many people that don't have a place to stay or home accommodation. So, and this is like part of the disconnect in government policies and the hearings of the people. If, as the president is talking about provision of 3,212 houses in Abuja, yes. The other thing is, how is he going to help these people that are on the street? There was no communication on the policies that make them access it. Because in Nigeria, where we have had issue in housing, what causes the housing deficit is we don't have a mortgage system like in other developed parts of the world where people have 25 years, 30-year prepayment plan. Any mortgage you are getting into in Nigeria, they give you 12 months, at most 24 months to pay.
And most people who access mortgage plans in Nigeria are often civil servants.
Yes.
So if somebody who is not a civil servant wants to access the renewed Hope City or a building in the renewed Hope City, how possible is it for someone who is not in the system to do that?
There's no policy except you have your cash to pay. But if we are to begin to profile solution or talk or come up with ideas on how we can make it affordable, there have been some developers that have come with rent to own. That rent to own policy should be led by the federal government, where they build a house, you take it on a rent, but that your rent is counting equivalent to owning that property. Because people pay rent for 10 years, and when they don't have means of sustaining, they are ejected out. And because there's no future of owning that property, some people even have interest in diverting their funds in other things than focusing on paying that rent. If someone knows that this rent I'm paying will end up helping me own this property, they will pay with diligence, knowing that they are paying for the house they will own, and that burden will lessen for them.
Well, we're talking about rent to own. It's one of the modalities that you take at Hillvert Realty to ensure that affordable housing reaches everyone, especially in Abuja. But I want you to just hold your thoughts on that while we take a look at the president's address yesterday, where he talked about the renewed Hope Cities across the 6 geopolitical zones of the Federation.
6 months ago in Kasana, Abuja, I inaugurated the first phase of our ambitious housing initiative, the Renew Hope City and Estate. This project is the first of 6 we have planned across the nation's geopolitical zones. Each of these cities will include a minimum of 1,000 housing units, with Kasana itself set to deliver 3,212 units. In addition to this city project, we are also launching the Renew Hope Estate in every state, each comprising 500 housing units. Our goal is to complete a total of 100,000 housing units over the next 3 years. This initiative is not only about providing homes, but also about creating thousands of jobs across the nation, as well as stimulating economic growth.
Well, the president there speaking about the renewed Hope City. One thing that he pointed out that I want you to talk on is, he said it's not just about building houses, but also about job creation. Firstly, I had asked about the rent to own. So let me get your thoughts on rent to own before the other question.
Okay, yes, just like my colleague here mentioned, rent to own is actually a great way for low and middle income earners to actually have the chance at owning a home, especially in a very competitive environment like Abuja.
Yes.
Now, we've been able to achieve that by building affordable houses at locations where the land cost is not that much. You understand? Because one of the challenges is the land cost for developers. You understand? So we've been able to achieve that through partnerships as well. Now we bring in people who are looking forward to own a home. Understand? Okay, we go into an agreement with them, and then have a payment period. And we came to understand that is on a normal ground, when you rent out your apartment,
yes,
to a tenant, right? It's usually the first 1 year, 2 years is easy for them to remit their rents. You understand? But when it subsequently becomes hard, you understand? But when it comes to the rent to own aspect, it's easier for them because they believe they are buying it. You You understand? So there's a more personal interest. They are not seeing the house as that of the developer. They are seeing it as theirs, and even maintenance becomes quite not as cumbersome or hard
for the developer.
For the developer, you understand? So, and so far it's been great. But I think for sustainability, the government has to also come in providing sustainable policies that can be able to make sure we can scale. You understand?
Well, in terms of job creation, the president rightly mentioned it. Now, quite right, it will create jobs for people to come and work, at locations where the project is holding. But my question to you is, how sustainable are these jobs, or are they just short-term gigs that people will do for a couple of months? If the project perhaps ends, what happens to these jobs that have been the thousands of jobs that the president said will be created as a result of the project?
Well, like I would always say that the government cannot provide jobs for every citizen, right? However, it's the sole responsibility of the government to help in easing the unemployment rate in Nigeria. Now, for the job creation in terms of this particular project, it's going to provide, I think, over 1 million jobs, just I think within Abuja alone, and so spanning the lifespan of the project. You understand? So both direct and indirect jobs. So of course there are people that could attain a certain level of financial freedom through the process of the lifespan of the project, but there is actually no sustainability, because once the project is done, that means the job is done. Exactly, even for contractors, for contractors. So it's within the lifespan of the project. So it's just a short-term ease, I would say, to the unemployment rate in Nigeria. Yeah.
Well, crossing over to you, Engineer Churchill, you mentioned earlier that there are lots of houses in the FCT that are lying dormant without people being able to access them, especially due to the high cost of these properties. Now, in your experience or years that you've spent as a civil engineer, I'm sure you've seen the rising cost of homes in the last couple of years. Houses are becoming almost impossible for the common man to acquire. How does this renewed Hope City come in to placate some of these homes that are, too expensive for people to buy?
Like my colleague has said about the cost of developing for developers because of the cost of land. If government can go into partnership in the sense of making land, taking care of the cost of land, because they are the one that allocates land. If they can give a developer land for free at a very low subsidized rate and condition for those that are doing rent to own, especially those are operating on those policies, if they are offered land at
subsidized prices
or even no cost at all, but with the mandate or the agreement that those that will rent this on, these are the price you are going to pay it, with a worked out plan on, with the land cost taken away, and possibly also there's an aspect of subsidizing building materials for those homes. If they can subsidize using material that we use for those homes, the cost of that building will come down, basically. And for those that have built houses that are unoccupied, government should have a policy of either how to take over those homes and pay them off and give it to the masses, or have a better working arrangement, or insist that those buildings must be put on a mortgage arrangement for a period of time and be occupied.
Well, I remember when the current minister of the FCT, Barrister Nyesom Wike, came into power, one of the pronouncements he made at the very early days of his regime or his administration was that abandoned projects in the FCT must either be completed or construction must continue in them. And we've seen in the last few months people have sworn to action. A lot of government infrastructure projects have been completed, and on the other hand, private sector infrastructures have also kicked off. However, in contrast to this, in places like Karshi, for instance, or Apuwasa, where we find the expressway that is currently being constructed, and the FCT minister also made a pronouncement that in the next 7 months it will be completed. Instead of prices of plots of land there to sort of remain at a stable rate, we saw a sudden skyrocketing of prices. If situations like this persist in the country, do we see an end to this particular means of high cost of housing anytime soon?
Well, you can't, obviously.
But how can the government ensure that when infrastructure projects come to a particular district that is developing, that the prices do not unnecessarily go out of hand?
The point here is that individual and private developers are there to make profit. So the only thing is that government should always be at competition with private developers by going into partnerships with as much developers as possible, so that those that don't have partnership with government will now be competing with those that have partnership with government. And because of government's influence and support to those that have partnership with them, it will cause the rest to come down in their price. Because if you are getting a property when the road was not done at a low price, and because the road is now paved and tarred, we are going higher. We are not going higher.
Increasing prices of property by up to 500%.
It's not because you want to break even, it's because you want to take advantage of the opportunity. But government stepping into partnership with some developers will help bring down the prices.
Well, let me get your take on this, Mr. Moses.
Yeah.
Particularly in shanty towns in the FCT, we've seen situations where developers move into a particular area, or they're about to take over a plot of land where there are shanties, people living in corrugated roof houses and the rest, and the issue of settlements coming and the rest. Do you think that perhaps instead of the burden being solely on developers, maybe the government can sort of take up a little bit of that load to help with the cost of settlements for these people?
Well, I think,
considering the fact that they are even illegal settlements.
Yes. Well, I think the government could come in, but I think the major aspect in which the government can play a significant role in such cases is by being able to provide policies.
Yes.
You understand? Policies that can be able to give access to each group of persons in Nigeria, both the low, the middle income earners and high income earners. Understand? And one thing that I keep on saying is that I like the fact that the Renewed Hope housing project has been able to replicate something that, if we can get it on a large scale, will really reduce the housing deficit in Nigeria. Because the model at which it is being applied is that the ministry provides the enabling environment for the enabling environment, and then the off-takers, then for the consortium of developers who have the funds to come in to build. You understand? So if the government can do that generally,
yes.
Now by providing that enabling environment, and then the off-takers are being provided by the mortgage banks, you understand, so of course to the ministries and all that. So if there's an enabling environment, understand, we will not be having a lot of people in those shanties. And if there are policies, it won't even be difficult for the developer to settle the settlers, the illegal settlements or whatever, but it won't be difficult. And so there really needs to be a presence of the government in all the value chain of development in order to be able to mitigate these housing issues. So to answer your question, I would say that yes, the government will come in, but I think it's not even a major issue in terms of the housing deficit. Understand? It's not a major issue in terms of settling those shanties. The major issue should be in the policies, and should be, of course, like my colleague said, he mentioned the high rise of the cost of construction materials. You understand? It's when developers are in business to make profit.
Yes.
You understand? And I was making a research on how we can be able to put a ceiling to the the rentals in Abuja, because it's high. We have over 600 houses that are empty. People cannot afford it. You understand? So it's empty. Now, okay, recently the Senate was talking about being able to regulate the rentals to bring it down to monthly rent. You understand? So you pay an upfront of 3 months and then subsequently
you pay monthly. As we find in other climes of the world.
Exactly. But again, they were talking about putting a ceiling to the rent. You understand? But when you put a ceiling to the rent house a tenant can pay, it means then you are bridging, or you are trying to suppress the profit margin
of the
developer. Exactly, which in the long run will reduce investors coming into Nigeria, or even the investors in Nigeria going into the housing market, because we're in the market to make profit, and you understand that real estate keeps appreciating. So I would say that there really needs to be a presence, like as simple as the interest rate is very, very high. If a developer wants to access loans from the banks, interest rates are very, very high. And in a system where you need to provide infrastructure, because we have low infrastructure in terms of here, that most places don't have infrastructure. So you as a developer, you have to provide the infrastructure yourself.
Well, realistically speaking now, for you as a developer and someone who has been in the business, do you think that the monthly rents policy that is being proposed by the Senate is perhaps a substantial one that is workable?
Well, I mean,
excluding the ceiling peg for the cost of monthly rent.
Okay. Well, I think it's a great one, right? It's a great one, especially there are two ways to it. Mostly, it will be a little bit favorable to those who have monthly income, which I would say the civil servants.
Yes.
And I think the only way that can be possible if the government put a system whereby your rent goes directly from your salaries to the landlord.
Almost like a mortgage.
Exactly, almost like a mortgage, because at the end of the day we're looking at people having that luxury of putting out a chunk of their salaries, because of course you understand the climate of the financial
economic reality that we are facing in our country.
Yes, I think it's a great system, but it will be very, very doable if there is a conducive economic climate.
Now, Engineer Azubike, I saw you nodding when he mentioned the monthly rents policy by the Senate. What do you subscribe to this, or do you share a different line of thought?
I share a slightly different line of thought.
Okay.
In the sense that it should be made a bit optional. It should be made a bit optional. It should be a tenant. If you want, a tenant should be given an option, because some tenants monthly arrangements may not work for them. They will prefer yearly arrangements. In the sense that some people, based on the organization they work, they are paid housing allowance at the end of the year, which they channel to pay their rent. If they are having that kind of arrangement and we are to be collecting the money monthly, because some of their salary are being kept to accumulate and enable them pay a rent, the what is left for them cannot afford their paying monthly.
Yes.
Again. So that's why I subscribe to an optional arrangement based on what works. If a tenant should have the right to say, I want monthly or yearly, not the landlord in this case now, because if you leave it option openly, some landlord may insist on monthly. But where a tenant wants a monthly arrangement, the landlord should be able to
either accept or decline.
No, it should not have the option of declining. That's what I mean.
Okay.
The policy is that it shouldn't. But if a tenant now wants a yearly payment, the landlord should not also decline.
Yeah.
That means the tenant should have the right to choose the pattern that he wants.
Payment that they want. That would be easier for them to pay.
Because the most important is that rent comes as at when due. And also there should also be punishment, because looking at the policies to an extent it seems one-sided to the landlord.
In favor of the landlord.
In favor of the tenants. The monthly payments being the right of the tenant, like as I subscribe, being the right of the tenant to choose either to pay monthly or pay yearly, not the landlord's right in this case. On the other hand, to balance it and give the landlord some leverage is that you should not falter in any of the ones you choose. There should be consequences for either failing to pay, because you are the one that shows the options.
Talking about those consequences, engineer, we've seen in recent times, or as the Nigerian landlord-tenant situation has always been, where the landlord evicts a tenant from a house and they go to court.
Yep.
And then the court asks the tenant to stay for a certain period of time,
6 months.
6 months, and in most cases they go back to court. It's quite a dirty business.
Yep.
in that space.
Yep.
And mostly in favor of the tenant and disfavor of the landlord. How can we change this policy to favor both parties, where there is a level playing ground, nobody gets cheated and nobody gets the win more than the other?
Okay. Doing it proportionately, for instance, if a yearly or an annual renter person has 6 months
Yes.
for litigation before he can be evicted for defaulting in rent, a monthly payment person should have like 6 weeks. Should have like 6 weeks. With that, some people may prefer, a landlord may prefer the 6 weeks legal litigation. So those are the balances that, because so it should be a holistic policy change. Because if you don't change that law of 6 month litigation and you are subscribed to monthly payment, and someone that defaults the monthly payment, you are going to drive the person, a landlord, for 6 months.
I mean, 6 months is half a year. So if they could stay for half a year, if the rent is 2 million, that's about 1 million naira gone. What do you think, Mr. Moses?
It's actually not favorable to the landlord.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, because at the end of the day, we understand that of course the economy is not favorable for everyone, but it's business at the end of the day. And if these policies can be like you said, be worked on to be favorable to both parties, because 6 months is a lot. 6 months is a lot. And you find cases from first-hand experience where the tenants become very, very nonchalant, exactly, nonchalant, and they don't really put on effort, because they know, take me to court, take them to court. They know that, of course, the law is in their favor. You understand? And I think it creates some laxity in their end, being able to, put that discipline in providing the rents as at when due. So I think that policy should be looked at a little, and of course and then again, for landlords, again, the policies should really be implemented to mitigate, or should I say reduce, the housing, the rent, the housing deficit and the rentals.
Yes.
Of course, rentals is very, very important.
Well, thank you, Mr. Moses, for sharing your thoughts on this. I'm still in the studio with Engineer Churchill Azubike, who is a civil engineer, as well as Mr. Moses Abba, who is founder CEO Hilvard Realty, a real estate developer and broker. And we have been discussing ways to mitigate the housing deficit in the FCT and beyond, in line with the President's speech and address to the nation yesterday, the 4th of August, addressing the renewed Hope City that is planned to be constructed in the 6 geopolitical zones of the nation. Remember to also share your thoughts with us across our social media handles at ADBN TV. Also, you can watch us on DSTV channel 258, on StarTimes channel 140, Avo TV app, Limex World TV app, and Niger TV app. For more stories, you can also visit our website on www.adbntv.com. Now, back to the conversation, Mr. Moses. You are a real estate developer, and from all indications, we know how expensive properties are in Abuja.
Yes.
And most, as Engineer Azubike has rightly pointed out, there are a lot of houses that are lying dormant. Properties, you also mentioned about 600 houses lying dormant in the FCT.
Yes.
Is it by any chance that developers can sort of stem down their prices? I know any businessman goes into business for the sake of profit.
Profit, yeah.
But we have seen developers taking advantage of, say, customers or clients, and shooting up their prices far more than they should. Is there a way to regulate this and have an even price where the developer makes profit, but on the other hand, the buyer also has a fair buy at the property?
Well, I think I would like to reply to this in terms of, would I say, the butterfly effect. You understand that a little change actually causes a big reaction. You know, yes, of course, the developer can be able to step down the prices, but you would look at how the developer comes up with this construction and of course the houses.
Yes.
Okay, the developer has to get loans sometimes. If he's not getting loan, is in, you know, probably OPM. You know, investments comes in different ways, and this investment comes with interest rates. If it's from the bank, I talked about the high interest rates from you know,
From the banks.
exactly, high interest rates, and these are government policies, you know, that affect the prices of this property, and especially in Abuja, where we are having high cost of land. You understand? So you're buying the land at a very high cost. You are providing infrastructure, like I said, especially in most areas,
Yeah.
and then also, if you're taking investment or loan from the bank, you're getting it at a high interest rate. So these things, you consider it, and at the end of the day, the property in itself, even without you putting your profit margin, is already high for the average, or should I say the low and middle income earners. The property in itself, without your profit margin, just the cost of the construction is already high. So at the end of the day, even if you do your profit margin, it will still be high. You understand? So I think the developers to be able to step down prices, it has to be a collaboration process between the government and the developers. It's a collaboration process, because you look at other cases where we're having affordable housing
yeah.
projects. You would look at, there's a system to it that the government is always present where there is affordable housing projects, like the project of the renewed hope
city.
currently. Exactly, we have 80% that is going to the low and middle income earners, and then we have 20%, of course, for those that cannot be able to, you know, they don't have that sort of value to be able to access. And so it's been splitted. But at the end of the day, developers can also help in stepping down the prices of, you know, the houses to make it affordable. They can help in, you know, being more pragmatic. And what I mean by that is looking at being more innovative. This is where innovation comes in. You understand? Looking at what other countries are doing to provide affordable housing projects. How can we be able to, you know, get to produce construction materials locally and being supervised by experts, and so that it can be more affordable? You understand? How can we be able to get innovations like let's say alternative construction materials that can be able to bring down these prices? So I think when developers start to think outside the box, start to become more innovative, I think there will be a huge decrease in terms of the prices. Yes.
Oh, well, let me get your take now, engineer. You mentioned earlier something about the high cost of building materials, and as Mr. Moses also rightly pointed out, there has to be alternative means of sourcing for these building materials locally, or alternative means of housing in general. As your profession, civil engineering, you know, you deal with houses, construction of houses, and ensuring that, you know, they are up to standard. What other means or alternative means of housing can maybe the Nigerian government or even private developers, you know, take up to ensure that housing is provided to the populace? Or what alternative means of housing can be explored?
Yeah, like there are two ways, like he mentioned about different local construction materials.
Yes.
One is local construction materials, the lot that goes into it, both local production and studying the environment that can withstand such materials.
Yeah.
If you check online or other climes, there are other building materials that are being used. Like, for instance, there's a building material I always wish we can have. It's not like a tent-like structure, but it's decent and it's movable.
Okay.
If it's movable, you can just assemble it in a place, and people just put a little infrastructure. People can settle there. You have a lot of vast land that are not being used, but in our climate, because of insecurity, putting people there put them in danger.
I mean, we have also seen people explore options of using shipping containers to, build houses.
Yes.
Even here in the FCT.
Yes. Those are options when properly padded, because those containers can be hot. Actually, based on our weather and
The climate
change, it can be hot, except we're properly padded, and you have to run with having AC in it. When we don't have adequate power supply and you are staying in those kind of place as a house, it comes with its own challenges. But on the side of reducing costs, as my brother talks about, for developers, there are some agencies like government are giving some people single-digit interest loans. For developers that are developing for the masses at a reduced cost, if there are such projects will be tied with a single-digit loan, it can go a long way to bring down costs so that people can access those houses and can be affordable. The sincerity we have in this country actually, that despite what the Mr. President have said about the housing 1,000, looking at our population, it's like a drop in an ocean, because Nigerian population is growing like over 5 million almost every year.
We are currently at 230 million.
So when you are giving maybe less than 1 million house every year, and your population growing at 5 million or thereabout every year, you can't catch up. We need to rejig and think in the light of our population growth if we actually must arrest this situation. Because one of the policies this government has made that is also even crippling developers. My brother, I'm surprised, has not mentioned is that they have a bond. They create the interest rate on bond was more attractive for the people, investors. So many of people that could have put their money in real estate quickly to take the money and put in bond. And the government needed money to fund the project, so they brought that. But on the other hand, government, but on the other hand, is squeezing the developers, because people, and that's why if you shake, the high cost of building material was high, then the investors are now putting their money in bonds, thereby squeezing developers and consequently affecting housing availability for many Nigerians.
Well, Mr. Moses, he quite rightly made a point there, talking about the government bonds that most investors have shifted their attention to. How is this affecting your industry?
Well, it's causing a big effect, and then of course, like he said, now the idea of the bond is for the government to fund projects, you understand? But
I believe you also double as an accountant, so this is you also double as an accountant, so this is quite a good one.
Yes, it is. Well, so like that's what I'm trying to find a balance to, right? Now the idea of the bonds is for government to be able to fund projects, right? And then now the ripple effect is the fact that now I would now sit down as an investor and like, okay, how much do I get from putting my money into real estate and from putting my money into bonds? And of course I would find that the bonds are much high in terms of return on investment, and I'll opt for it. Now it now becomes an issue of two things. If we're looking at reducing the housing deficit, for we developers, we go into business, aside from the fact that we're into business to make the profit, we're into business to reduce the housing deficit. So it now separates the segment of those who want to become homeowners, right, and those who actually have the money to invest. You understand? So if I'm looking to buy a house, if I'm looking to own a house, what I will be looking at is either putting my money into the bonds where it increases. I take when it comes out, I definitely would have to buy a home.
Yes.
You understand? I always say that no matter what, I'm a developer, no matter where you put your money or no matter where you make your money, it's a good portion of it will come back to real estate. You understand? So it's a case of that's a very good statement.
I think there's a twist to it. It's for those that want to do business, already landlord, they have their houses of their own. They will not bring their money to you in real estate because they are investors. They are looking for where they can multiply their money.
Not homes to live.
Not homes to live. You already have one. But many people in the real estate, what made the real estate sector to thrive is not people trying to get house to live in. It's people now buying more houses and renting out.
So investment
purposes. That's what actually drive the real estate business in this country. So now it will only be left for those that are looking for houses to own, which a smart investor should go for that rent to own if you want to be in business. Because you're looking for those big investors that bring money to buy and now rent, you have to go direct to those that want to rent by renting to them to own.
I mean, you're quite advocating for this rent to own.
Yes, the president is talking about it.
Yeah.
The unrest in the country is because people, their basic needs are not met. You need food, you need shelter, you need clothing. Those are the basic needs.
Yes.
And for our country to measure up as a developed nation, we should move in that direction to make sure people have what to eat, have shelter over their heads and clothing. Once those three are met, you reduce unrest. So any reasonable government, like our president is doing, in providing accommodation, housing, they should do it in a scale that will catch up with our growth. And even any subsequent government that's coming should move in that direction. We should have a policy plan that is 10-year policy, 20-year plan for that housing that is sustainable. Otherwise, this unrest may get out of hand.
You know, when we talk about affordable housing, to the middle and upper, income class, it might seem like, yes, affordable housing is really affordable, but to the lower class, what might seem affordable to the middle and higher income class is not really affordable, especially for people who are migrating to the FCT from different parts of the country, rural communities in different parts of the country, due to one out of many reasons, insecurity. If perhaps the renewed Hope City stands and civil servants start moving into these houses and leaving their own houses that they now occupy vacant, how is it possible to have people migrating, being able to pay for these houses that the civil servants are currently staying in?
Okay, so I think there are different systems at which people can actually pay for those houses. So we have the outright payment, of course, those who have the money to split into the payment plans, and then we have the mortgage options, and then the rent to own. Yeah. Now, I would say that the government has really looked into this in terms of providing optional payments. And you see the mortgage loans, or the mortgage rather, is not just accessible to civil servants.
Yes.
Even non-civil servants can access this. So it's now a case of the productivity in the aspect of the person seeking to access these houses, these loans or these affordable houses by the government. So at the end of the day, like I would say, the government cannot do everything, but it can provide a platform for this particular project. In terms of the Renewed Hope housing project, those who are not in the class of the civil servants, who are probably not earning that much, can look at the rent to own, or they could look at the mortgage. You understand?
Yeah.
And I think these are options that they can look at. And then with time, it gives them the time to be able to work and actually remit to own their own houses. So I think it's an option to look at.
Let me come back to you, Engineer Azubike. I mentioned earlier that there is an influx of people into the FCT.
Yeah.
Now, if these people come in here and they do not have homes to live in, they would resort to sleeping on the streets, on the bridges, which, of course, the Abuja Environmental Protection Agency is fighting head-on to ensure that nothing like that happens, as in the case of Lagos. However, if people do not have homes to live and they live in shanties or they sleep on the streets, there will be agitations, and eventually there will be an increase in the crime rate in the FCT, which already we are seeing tendencies springing up from different quarters of the Federal Capital Territory. How can we stop this head on? This mass inflow of people into the FCT, the Federal Capital City is getting overpopulated, if you ask me. How can we manage this particular development?
Okay, with the policy of Mr. President, the Renewed Hope plan for cities,
Yes.
which cuts across the 6 geopolitical zones, 1,000. And if they are going to do this particular one, you mentioned the address yesterday, for 3 years, I don't know. Or is this one really?
We have already established that people who are not civil servants might not be able to access homes in the Renewed Hope City.
Yeah.
Now, my question is, for people who are migrating to the city center. Not civil servants, not businessmen, not well-to-do people.
Yeah. They are coming to find their feet.
Coming to find their feet, coming for greener pastures, and there is no place to live in.
That's where the option of one, temporary structures that are decent comes in, with an arrangement of monthly payments also comes in. Then I don't know if Nigeria has something like refugee arrangements. Like
in the case of the northeastern part of the country, where we've seen IDP camps due to the Boko Haram insurgency.
But the incident here is that for someone that doesn't have a decent place, it should be a designated or provided place by government. There can be a makeshift arrangement, either with some kind of arrangement of little pay or weekly pay or monthly pay, till they're able to get something doing and move. Like there are some container lights or glass I get online from China and all that. They can just clear a particular section of the land and man those things. And some of these people can have an agricultural plan where they can go and do some
farm what they would eat.
Yes. Once you give them a decent place and they already know they are here, people can get them and work in farms and have something they can leverage on to survive.
All right, thank you very much, Engineer Azubike Churchill. To get your thoughts now in closing, in a few words, how can we stop the housing deficit in the FCT head on?
I think it's just, let's have a very, very visible presence of the government, you understand, in providing the right policies, in also helping to ease the inflation. And of course, and also because once the inflation is eased to some extent, we'll have quite, to some reasonable extent, affordable construction materials. So I would see government policies, and then I would also talk about, land use acts in terms of making lands quite affordable. Yes.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us here in